Hello, everyone. I'm Selena Gora, the CEO of WomenHeart. I'd like to welcome you to today's WomenHeart Heart Talks, our webinar about eating well, embracing a heart-healthy diet. During the best of times, there are many barriers to eating healthy for our overall health and for our hearts. And the challenges of lockdowns and restrictions to food shopping options have made healthy eating that much more difficult. Today, we're going to hear from Lindsey Robertson, certified health coach, National Academy of Sports Medicine trainer, and a cardiac care yoga specialist with Dignity Health in Arizona, about how we can overcome some of these barriers. We're also going to hear from Lori Woods, a WomenHeart Champion from Bentonville, Arkansas, about her own struggles and triumphs with improving her heart health by managing her diet better. And finally, from Dr. Eileen Hsich, Lori's cardiologist and the director of the Women's Heart Failure Clinic and Associate Medical Director for the Heart Transplant Program at the Cleveland Clinic, who will talk about the direct benefits for our heart when we do embrace a heart-healthy diet. So before we begin with our speakers, we'd like to take a moment to have you take a quick survey to see how you're feeling and how you yourself have embraced a heart-healthy diet. So you see the poll come up, and the question is, which of the following healthy eating habits are you following at least some of the time? And as you all have done this before, you can answer as many of these, you can mark as many of these answers as apply to you. So there's the question in front of you. Which of the following heart healthy habits are you following at least some of the time? We'll give you a few seconds to answer the question. So it looks like many of you, as the results are coming in, are taking some action. We've got a few more of you to answer. It's really good. You guys are doing a lot out there to improve your diets. It's wonderful. And when we do finish, I will share with you some of these results. Okay, so it looks like a good third of you are reducing your intake of saturated and trans fats, and just about a little under 30% of you are lowering your salt intake to improve your health, and about 15% are consuming less sugary beverages, as well as trying to reduce, let's put it in quotes, junk food intake. So a good portion of you are taking some very heart healthy habits. But interestingly, we have none of you who've marked down better whole grain intake and better daily water intake, which I know will be covered somewhat during the course of our session today. So without further ado, and thank you for your answers, without further ado, I'd like to welcome Lindsey Robertson to speak.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am going to talk to you a little bit about a heart-healthy diet and what that looks like, and just ways that you can bring in more heart-healthy habits to your daily living. So I'm going to go on to the next slide here and just kind of let you guys see what does a heart-healthy diet look like. So a heart-healthy diet is rich in high-fiber foods, including fruits and vegetables. As Selena just mentioned, those whole grains, the beans, and low-fat dairy, fish, nuts as part of a balanced diet. So it's really important when you are trying to create a heart-healthy diet that you really limit the intake of any of those added sugars. So we talked about the sugary junk foods and things like that. We really want to try to really limit and decrease those as much as possible, as well as the bad fats. So we really want to watch the amount of saturated fat that we get on a daily basis. We really want to aim to try to be under 15 grams of saturated fat per day. And one thing that I do for a lot of my lifestyle change clients is I have them use some sort of a tracking app, something like a MyFitnessPal, that actually breaks down the nutrients so they can see exactly how much they're taking in. So in regards to your saturated fat, if you're thinking, how will I know if I am staying under 15 grams of fat? That is a great way and a great tool for you just to kind of see how you can do that and how you can stay on track when it comes to making sure that you're not getting a lot of saturated fat. Okay, here's another breakdown of the Mediterranean diet. This is something that I follow mainly, and the Mediterranean diet is very similar to a heart healthy diet. It also emphasizes really on eating whole, fresh foods, and that's the most important thing here. So the fish, the fruits, the vegetables, the beans, the high fiber and whole grains, such as the breads and whole grains, pasta and stuff like that. Cooking with very low saturated fat oils, such as olive oil, maybe something like extra virgin olive oil. You still can eat some meat on the Mediterranean diet, but we really want to aim to get the more lean types of meat. So things like chicken, lean chicken, skinless chicken, lean ground beef, obviously pushing fish so that you can get that high omega-3 fatty acids. As you can see here, that's listed out. Also, the fats that are allowed in the Mediterranean diet are mainly from unsaturated fats. So that's the important thing. We still want to get good fats in our diet, but again, we want the good fats. So we want to pay attention to the source of the fat. Where is it coming from, and making sure that it's good. All right, so you can see some of the options on some of the oils that you cook with, the nuts, the seeds. Those are the types of things we want to incorporate more into our diet. So we're going to move on to the next slide. This is going to give you kind of an overview of some of the foods you should be trying to incorporate on a daily basis to really have more of that heart healthy diet. Fiber-rich foods are really going to be the biggest bang for your buck. So I always tell my clients that I'm working with, high fiber foods are very nutrient dense foods. Those are the foods that we want to choose. So this is a great list of some options of what types of foods you can eat or that are going to be higher in fiber. So I also tell my clients, based off of this handout that you can see here, the 4 different categories. So it has a listing of the vegetables, the fruits, the nuts, the seeds, the grains, the beans, and you can see that it basically is portioned out how much fiber, how many grams per serving. So if you also look here, it's going to specifically say that women in general, so women that are between 19 and 50 years of age, should be aiming to reach 25 grams of fiber a day. If you're over 50, it's 21 grams. Again, this is why it's important to use some type of tracking app or something so you can see whether or not you're truly hitting that goal. If you're getting a lot of high fiber foods, then you're getting those heart healthy foods that you need to protect your heart and protect your body from other illnesses and diseases. So it's important. We don't know how much we're truly getting unless we can physically see that. So if you look at the option here with the foods listed out, I always tell my clients to go through each category and choose one from each category, and then you can kind of add up how many grams of fiber you get to see whether or not that is enough for your daily intake. It's an easy place to start. You can choose an option that you like, pick one that you like off of all of those 4 categories, and go with that. It's a starting point. So you kind of stick with the stuff that you know and that you enjoy. And as you get more used to it, then you can branch out a little bit more. You can try other options. But this is a great way for you to see whether or not you're really hitting those goals. If you can maintain those fiber goals, then you know that you're doing everything you can as far as with your food intake to protect your heart. So it's important that we really aim to get as much of these foods as possible on a daily basis. One little tip that I like to give out to my clients as well, this is just an easy little tip, making something like a smoothie. So from fresh whole foods, this is one way. You can do it at home. You could choose from the list. So what I did is I kind of chose a few items on this list. All right. For a smoothie option, if you were to choose spinach, raspberry, chia seeds, you can throw in maybe your base would be something like an almond milk, maybe coconut milk, or here I'm in Arizona. For me, I like to use coconut water because it's very high in minerals and it's very, very hot here. So it's a good way to stay hydrated. But if you mix those three ingredients, the spinach, the raspberries, and the chia seeds, right there, you're gonna get 22 grams of fiber. So it's just a very easy way to ensure that you are reaching your fiber goals. Again, these are very nutrient dense foods. Those are what we're really wanting to try to get. Doesn't have to specifically be those ingredients. However, there's a nice list for you to choose from. You could also try pairing something like the quinoa with some chopped broccoli or cauliflower, topping it with diced avocados, and use that as a side, so replacing that with maybe a high starchy white pasta or something like that at dinner. So it's just trying different options when you're going to the store and looking to see what might be available, but allowing yourself to explore and try different things, you know, get creative and kind of open up your mindset when it comes to cooking and other options. I think we tend to hold on to what we know. So this is kind of looking at, you know, a fresh new start. So we're going to go ahead and switch on over to the next slide. So what are the benefits of eating healthy? So it does reduce your risk of disease, including heart disease and stroke, diabetes, cancer, and so many other medical complications. Also assists in lowering your cholesterol and managing your blood sugar, lowers the feelings of depression and anxiety, improves your mood and energy levels. Obviously, we see weight loss associated with changing our dietary habits and improved memory. So we'll switch on to the next. Who would benefit most from changing to a heart-healthy diet? Those with a high blood pressure, obviously diabetes, chronic kidney disease, or if you are older than 50, those who are at risk for heart disease or those who have pre-existing heart complications, individuals who consume poor diets, low in nutrient-dense foods, sedentary lifestyles, and really in reality, we all could benefit from changing over to a heart-healthy diet. Next slide. So maintaining a heart-healthy diet at home. So gotta get creative. You gotta open up the mindset. I think that's the biggest thing, is not being stuck in a fixed mindset. We gotta go open up to the growth mindset. And you gotta look at this as an opportunity, a time that we can actually make change, even though it's such an uncertain time for all of us. And it's very uncomfortable. But this is an opportunity, and it's a better time that we could actually take advantage of this and change some of our eating habits in this moment. It's so important right now with the state of the world that we really should be focusing more on how we can protect our own immunity. And that's just simply through eating whole foods. So it's so critical right now to really think about what ways you can start incorporating more of these nutrient-dense foods into your, you know, daily habits. Again, choose those things that you like right now, and then in time you grow and expand and you start, you know, trying different things after that. Okay, so eating a variety of healthy foods daily and planning and creating your healthy meals for the week, that's very important to create your meals for the week. Plan ahead. Okay, sometimes there may not be the foods that you want when you go to the grocery store, but definitely, again, if you're opening up your mindset, you're going and you're trying to choose whatever fresh options are available to you. Vary your diet if you can, so don't get stuck in just eating the same foods over and over. No one food or food group provides all the nutrients your body needs. for good health. So make it a habit to eat foods from all the food groups. Try exploring more of those plant-based meals. Expand your food choices by trying new fruits, trying new vegetables. If you go to the store and they don't have what you want, yet they have something else, try it. See if you like it. You don't know until you try it. So again, trying new whole grains when you go to the store as well. If you can switch to the next slide there. So meal planning, again, that's another one that's really going to help you to start incorporating these new heart healthy habits into your daily living. Think about the items that you need, and when you're planning out your menu, think about the fresh produce or veggies that you may be wanting to purchase. Think about ways that you can incorporate those vegetables into more than one meal so that they don't go bad. So for example, if you're buying, let's say grape tomatoes, where can you put those into your meal? You got to get creative. So when you're creating those meals, try to incorporate as many as you can into as many meals as possible so that that produce doesn't go bad, because it does tend to go bad very fast. So get creative in that way. Try adding, when you're cooking your food, try adding different types of peppers and seasonings to your meal just to spice it up and to give it a different flavor. And you get to just experiment, have fun with it. Look online and see what other types of recipes might be available to you. If you do have to go out and you plan to go out to eat, make sure that you go online, check for their healthy options that might be on the menu. Again, planning ahead. The more we plan, the more prepared we are, the better choices that we make. So it's planning, it's tracking. Those are the initial steps that it takes to really get us to see and start incorporating these new habits. Because if we can't see what we're doing, more than likely we're truly not doing what we think that we are. So this is just some tools to help you to kind of get yourself back on track, really see what you're doing. The more you do it and the more consistent you get with it, the more it becomes a habit. So again, start with those things that you enjoy. Think about the fruits and the vegetables that you enjoy at this point in time. Start there. Start incorporating, again, more of those fiber-rich foods. Use the list. Use some of the foods that are on there to just kind of get you started as you move forward and you're really trying to make these changes. Also, cooking and prepping is important as well. For me, and what I tell my clients all the time is try to make a little extra food. So every time you're cooking, maybe you plan ahead and you cook 1 or 2 additional servings. So that means you have additional food. So maybe you're going to use the leftover food for the following day. Maybe use that for lunch. Maybe use that for the next dinner. But again, then you know it's already there and prepared. The more prepared we are, the better choices that we make. You can make it simple. So it's just planning ahead. Again, making a little bit more. That will simplify your life the next day. So just kind of taking advantage of those times. And remember, ultimately, developing healthy habits doesn't happen overnight. And it is not meant to be an undertaking, drastic lifestyle change, but it starts with little steps and making little changes. And as you build and gain your confidence, you continue to just step out there and open yourself to more. Okay, thank you so much. And remember, a little progress each day adds up to big results.
Thanks so much, Lindsey. And now let's turn it over to Lori Woods, a WomenHeart Champion, who will share with us her heart story. Lori?
There we go. Thanks, Selena. Sorry about that. I have known for about 4.5 years that I have heart disease. And this all started back in around Thanksgiving of 2015. I spent a week with what I thought was the flu. And after suffering for a while, I finally decided to see my PCP, and I was immediately diagnosed with heart failure from an unknown cause, idiopathic dilated cardiomyopathy. I spent 14 days in the hospital at that time. Most of it was in ICU. I learned that I had an ejection fraction of 8%, and normal is about 55 to 70%. So I was given a pretty grim prognosis at that point. And this really blindsided me. I had no risk factors. I had no family history. I had low cholesterol levels. I had low blood pressure. And I had even recently been evaluated for a life insurance policy and had been told that I had less than 3% chance of ever developing heart disease. But I did. And I was emergency flighted to the Cleveland Clinic, where I began being treated by Dr. Eileen Hsich. I wore a life vest external defibrillator for 9 months, and then I was eventually implanted with a CRTD biventricular pacemaker in late 2016. And since then, I've made extensive dietary changes. So the next slide is what changes have I made to my diet. 2 big changes, but by far the most pervasive change that I've made is the sodium restriction. And it has changed everything about eating for me. It's changed where I eat. You know, we weren't really big restaurant people before, but now we eat probably 95 or 98% of our meals at home. It's changed what I eat. You know, I was a mom who raised 3 kids who did all the things, and we were busy. So although I made it a priority to eat at home, have dinner with the family, and make balanced meals, we didn't have snacks, we didn't have dessert, but I was relying on convenience foods, things like mixes and prepared sauces and seasoned meats, and those are loaded with sodium. So I had to learn to prepare those things myself and not rely on the convenience foods. So we're making them from scratch now. And we use a lot of fresh vegetables and fruits, like Lindsey was talking about. We use frozen if we need to. And there are even some canned items that have no salt added that we've been able to find. But it changes how you prepare food, and it even changes the recipes that you use. One of the things that's been a big change for us is we have a bread machine, and now we are making homemade bread every week. We have low sodium recipes, and we're enjoying that. So it's changed how I prepare. It's also changed when I prepare. All of us are sort of in that COVID season right now where we're having to plan ahead and maybe order our groceries and then go pick them up for the week. So there's that preparation that we have to know what we're going to eat for the week. But also, if you're really trying to eat low sodium, some of the ingredients for your recipes you make yourself. And for example, we do a cream of mushroom soup, and we have to have the fresh mushrooms and onions and spices on hand. And then we put that in the freezer and take it out one little baggie at a time and use that as an ingredient for our recipes. But that takes an extra level of planning. So all of those are things that we do in our family to try to reduce my sodium. And the other thing that change that I've made to my diet is a fluid restriction. I try to stay below 2 liters of fluids a day. And the easiest way that I've found to do that is to just have a pitcher in the refrigerator that has 2 liters of water in it, which is about 8 glasses. And then throughout the day, I can see that level going down and know how much I have left. If I drink something that's not water or away from home, then I just pour that amount of water out of the pitcher every day, and I can still keep track of where I'm at. So on the next slide, we're talking about how changing my diet has improved my health. And it's improved my health in so many ways. I feel better physically. My first experience on the other side of the sodium equation was when I thought I had the flu. And I was doing the tried and true remedy of saltines and sports drink, right? That's what you do when you have the flu. but those are loaded with sodium. So what I was doing was just suffocating my already weak heart because it was holding more and more and more fluid in with all of the sodium I was taking in on top of it. And when I went into the hospital that first time, they drained 14 pounds of fluid off of me, and I felt so much better immediately. But even now, I can tell when I have too much sodium. When we go out and I order, what I think is unseasoned meat, and later feel bad, sometimes I find out that that meat was actually preserved in a sodium solution. Or if I order unseasoned pasta or vegetables or rice and then feel bad, I find out that maybe they were cooked in a salted water but not seasoned. So those can make a big difference in how you feel, just really on a day-to-day basis. Another thing another way that the diet has improved my health is through stamina. I am not napping during the day anymore. My fatigue level is lower, and it's because my heart is not working so hard to manage all of that excess fluid that is retained in there by the sodium. I had my EF, my ejection fraction, has improved. And it's not only due to sodium, because heart failure takes several pieces to treat. It's due to the medication I'm taking and the device that I have, but sodium plays a big role. And then finally, my mental health is better. I'm not being repeatedly hospitalized for fluid retention, and I'm not missing out on life events like graduations and weddings and babies being born. And that is a huge boost to mental health when you're dealing with something like heart failure. So the biggest obstacles that I have on the next slide are, really there's three of them. One of them is information. I remember the first spring that I had this, I was still wearing my life vest, and I went to a baseball game with my husband. And there was a gentleman sitting in front of us a couple rows, and I didn't know him, but he started explaining to his friend that he had just gotten out of the hospital. He had had heart surgery. And so I started, listening into his conversation because it piqued my interest. And he talked about cardiac rehab. And then pretty soon he got up and left and went to the concession stand and came back with a hot dog in each hand. And he told his friend, I didn't get the nachos because I'm trying to eat healthy. And of course he shouldn't have been eating the hot dogs either, but that's where he started. He knew not to eat the nachos. So we all start somewhere with our information. One of the really good sources of information that I found is cookbooks. My daughter bought me a cookbook the very first Christmas after my diagnosis, and we have worn that out. We found the recipes we like and the ones we don't like, and there's a lot of really good low sodium cookbooks out there. Websites, there's awesome websites now for low sodium cooking and recipes. Some of the ones that I use are sodiumoptional.com, sodiumgirl.com, and then there's hackingsalt.com. And there's even information on womenheart.org that helps you manage your sodium intake. And a second obstacle that I have, other than information, is availability. In grocery stores, a lot of times you won't see no salt added or low salt things available. You might have to ask your grocery store to order them. Also, it's a good idea to look where you wouldn't expect to find low sodium options. On Amazon, for example, I ordered sodium-free baking powder and sodium-free baking soda. At Aldi, if you have an Aldi in your area, they have a wonderful Greek salad dressing that just so happens to be low sodium. It's not even labeled as low sodium. At Trader Joe's, they have an amazing no salt added marinara sauce that we buy in bulk when we can find it. And then just at my Walmart, I often find no salt added canned goods and meat that is not preserved in sodium. It takes a lot of looking, but sometimes availability can be an obstacle. And then in restaurants, especially, it's an obstacle, because if you go to a restaurant and look at their menu, it's pretty common to see things like vegan options or gluten-free options or sugar-free options or dairy-free options, but you're probably not going to see a section on a menu that says sodium-free, or often not even low sodium, because those restaurants really wouldn't be in business if they offered those. For most people, that makes a huge difference in taste, which leads me to my third obstacle, which is missing salt. You know, a friend told me when I started this, she said, you know, I've heard that after a couple of months, you never miss the salt. And I hope that's true for you, but that's just not my story. I miss salt every single day. And I've had to find things to trick my palate into thinking that it's salty. And there's a lot of ways to do that. I use things like lemon or sour cream, fresh herbs. I use a lot of balsamic vinegar and even goat cheese, something that just gives that flavor of salt without adding the sodium. So that's a lot of information on how to, what my biggest obstacles would be. But what would I tell someone who's trying to get healthier, trying to start this sodium free? Because it's not something, it doesn't happen overnight. You know, I was a former salt lover, honestly, and it took me months to find all the salt in my house and get rid of it, because we used to salt our homemade chocolate chip cookies before we baked them. So we started, like the guy at the baseball game, we started with little incremental changes and found more and more and more ways to reduce sodium. But it does take more time, and it takes more money often to buy things that are no salt added or fresh rather than frozen or already prepared, sadly. But it will pay dividends in your ability to enjoy life. You know, I am doing so much better than people thought I would. I feel much better than people thought I would. And I attribute that to a lot of things. I attribute it to prayer, excellent medical care, rest, exercise, and largely to really sticking to the sodium restriction. You know, that is a controllable variable, and it can be empowering. There is so much out of your control when you get a diagnosis like heart failure that you can feel really powerless. But the amount of sodium that you take in every day is squarely in your court, and it can have a huge impact on your life. And so I hope that you'll be able to get some ideas from this and get some ways that you can start incorporating those habits into your life.
Thanks so much, Lori. And why don't we have you stay on, Lori? And I'd like to welcome Dr. Sheesh into the conversation for her to discuss a little bit about the changes that she saw in your condition as your diet steadily improved. Dr. Sheesh?
Hi, and thank you. I have to say, Lori, that was amazing. And Lori is an amazing patient. I have said it to you many times. You were one of the sickest people I met, and I see probably 1,000 patients a year, and I've been doing this for 16 years. So that's a lot of patients. And can we go to the next slide? When I met Lori, her ejection fraction I actually had written was 6%. So we can argue about the 2%. But it was also one of the largest hearts. And she was very weak. She was frail. She was malnourished. And she was wearing a life vest. And I remember turning to your husband afterwards saying, wow, are y'all coming back? Because they had come from Arkansas and my clinic is in Ohio. And I just thought, oh my gosh, how is this gonna work? And how are we gonna get to that next step? And if I told you, which I have not, that people who have a heart this week frequently are in the hospital, okay? Frequently. Because, you know, as you said, you could tell when you cheated, and you didn't even cheat on purpose, the rest of us do it on purpose. You would do it by accident, that you went to a restaurant and you thought it was actually, lean meat, and yet they had overnight soaked it in some salt-based spice. So you did things by accident, and yet because it was so rare and so you were so much in control of what you put in, you never required hospitalization again. And that's amazing. So when you're asking, is it worth it? Yeah. I mean, Lori has come from 2015, me worrying how she'd get from Arkansas to my office by flight, to now taking, recently I saw her just a couple of days ago, and she drives. They make it a fun experience. And she's traveled not only within the US, but she had one of those bucket lists where she went to Europe and really saw a lot. So she's an example of somebody who really can do everything, and can do it at each step of the way because she's so careful. So her ejection fraction, which started as very weak at 6%, following basically, medical therapy and getting a special pacemaker with a defibrillator, and being very rigid about her diet. She is very rigid. Her ejection fraction went to 40%. That's now a mild condition, and is only mildly dilated. And she feels better, but she's also doing better. And so I think when you ask yourself, because I'm a big salt person too, I think if I had to give up sweets, I could do it very easily. You tell me to give up my chips or something with salt, and that would be hard. That would be very hard. And she knew that that was the one thing she could control. And when you get a diagnosis that you don't feel that you have control over, one of the ways to do it is take control of your health by your nutrition, because she was able to actually prevent episodes of heart failure. And in the midst of COVID, you sure as heck don't want to be, frequently in the emergency room or the hospital. And she was able to achieve that for years. Next slide. So what were the things, that I've noticed? I've noticed that she's never had any heart failure symptoms or signs at all, which is amazing. There are only a few patients that I can say that about. So this requires being very rigid in your diet. She's actually gained weight. So I've never actually used weight as the marker as to when somebody needs more and more water pills, because there's healthy weight. Muscle weighs more than fat. So it's important to actually recognize that what she was able to do when she got the 14 pounds of fluid off was eat again and exercise again. And so she was able to gain healthy weight, and she's still very skinny. So it's actually now a healthy weight. She doesn't look malnourished. It's just, she looks very normal. And she's been able to actually travel, and all those dream experiences are things that she does and doesn't really, she plans, right? Lori, would you say you plan everything? You're a big...
Yes.
I may take a minute. Why don't you say, tell people when you have to come to the visit with me that you just did and you took a car ride, explain how you got there. How did you deal with the food situation?
Yeah. It's hard, and I think it's especially hard with the COVID season, but what we do, and this is just a normal trip to Cleveland for a checkup, is we would, we take a basket that has fruits and, air-popped popcorn and all kinds of snacks in it, but we also have a cooler that has meals in it that we had prepared and frozen individually. And then this is kind of a sneaky thing that we do, but we'll take one of those meals out, and a lot of times I will even go into like a Quick Trip and use their microwave and heat up my meal there. And then, then my husband's free to go through, whatever drive-through or whatever he would like to eat. But It takes a lot of extra planning and it's kind of cumbersome, but I think over the years I've figured out that just with the results and with how I feel, it's just really worth the investment to do that.
I mean, it's pretty amazing because she has a very long distance and has created a system to actually definitely prevent episodes. And she also is in control of what she's eating so she can enjoy it. So she puts in the popcorn, which I like. It's not always going to be, you know, fruit and vegetables and the fibers, which are all healthy, but occasionally you can have a snack that is fun, that is not going to throw you over. So she really plans and she, you know, freezes it, which I never would think that you could actually travel with frozen food, but she did. And what she does is, you know, as you heard, she'll microwave it at a local rest stop. So I think that's really a smart move, and that has enabled her to actually all this time done very well. Last slide. So I think that the take home for heart failure is actually that you really need to restrict your fluid. I think that's a big deal. Actually, we don't really have studies that are well designed to actually tell us how much salt, how much water to restrict. These are the guidelines that we kind of have used at the clinic, Cleveland Clinic where I work. But there isn't research showing it. I think that the proof is always, you can tell the difference between the person who decided to take that hot dog and eat it versus the person that actually recognized that the hot dog was loaded in salt. And I always say that things, you know, that are easy are usually preserved in salt. So I think that was one of the things I didn't realize, is that when we actually preserve food, we have to prevent bacteria from growing. And the best way to do that is to actually load it with salt so nothing grows. And when nothing grows, unfortunately, it's loaded in salt. So avoid canned food, frozen food, and processed food. Sometimes these are low salt, but you'd have to be really careful to figure out the difference. Fast foods, you know, pizza. I'll never forget how many people have come in my office to say, I just took a slice, and you're thinking, oh goodness, the dough is loaded in salt. The cheese is loaded in salt. That's like not a good idea. Chinese food, I love Chinese food, but you know, unless you know it's really low salt or you know the cook, it's usually not low salt. If it seems like it's not, it's not. And then obviously don't add salt. I think the other thing I want to mention is, you know, when I was listening to you, Lori, a couple of things went through my mind. I think that the very sad thing when you said that you had taken a, you know, physical exam and you passed flying colors, and then a 97% chance of success, and then you ended up with a 3% chance of a failure despite doing everything right. I think that most of these are actually looking at coronary heart disease, right? Coronary arteries. And heart failure is rarely in that equation when they're actually trying to do the risk analysis. And even when we look at the Red Dress campaign, actually, when they talk about heart disease, heart failure was not on that list, just to point that out. And when you look at the clinics around the world, when we actually started women's clinics, they were for heart disease, but not heart failure, which is very interesting. And so when I asked actually about the Red Dress campaign, the answer was that we decided that we would, when we got to that point, they felt that it was too late, okay? And that they wanted to actually prevent problems by treating the underlying diseases for which you had none. Diabetes, high blood pressure, right? High cholesterol, all the things you had none. Because as you said, you were a very good patient. So you got punished, but actually you were rewarded by your own good behavior, because you actually are somebody who takes control. And I think it gives others the reason to feel empowered to be able to do this right, enables them to actually live a more normal life and be able to travel, to do all those things that you want to do, and just take a little bit of extra time planning. Okay, with that, I'll say that thanks very much. And Lori, you've always been an amazing patient. And WomenHeart, you have done so much for all of us.
Yes.
Thanks so much, Dr. Sheesh and Lori. At this point, I'd like to invite our participants to put your questions into the Q&A section. But before I get to your questions, I've got a few questions myself, and I want to start with Lindsey, because I wrote this down, Lindsey, during your portion. I always was under the impression that when you go from taking whole foods, like whole fruits, and then moving that to a smoothie form, that you lose the fiber. Somehow I have this like notion that fiber, you have it when, you're eating an apple versus when you like put that apple into a blender. So can you talk a little bit about that? And then going from whole fruit and vegetable to smoothie to juice, because I know we also get mixed messages about juice and how juice isn't healthy either. So that'd be great if you can answer that. Let me ask, I get you to unmute yourself.
There we go. Okay, sure. So yes, when you are using raw vegetables or fruits, you're not going to lose any of the fiber when you are putting it into a smoothie form. If you were to cook a vegetable or something, you may lose a little bit of the nutrients there as it will break down. But putting the raw fruits and vegetables into a smoothie will not cause you to lose any of the fiber from that. So that myth is not true. And yes, we definitely want to try to use whole foods. And just like Dr. Hsich said, frozen, if that is all we have as far as like frozen fruits, yes, but there are always going to be some sort of preservatives in order to keep the fruit, fresh, or as it's being, in the freezer. So try to go with whole fruits and vegetables. And yes, try to limit the juice or not take the juice at all as an option. They're loaded in sugar, so a lot higher amounts than an actual fruit that has natural sugar. So we have a lot of additives in the juice. So juice is definitely, unless you're juicing your own straight from the fruit, that is going to be something different. However, purchasing and buying fruit juice in replacement of having fresh fruit, it's going to be loaded in sugar and additives. So then we have the preservatives and all those other things that we want to stay away from.
Okay, so but juicing yourself is fine.
Juicing yourself is fine, depending on what it is you're putting into that. So just, again, being careful of what you're adding and what you're using. If you're just using the fruit and it's natural sugar, that's one thing. But you got to pay attention to other ingredients if you're putting or adding anything else in there.
Okay, great. I see we have another question very similar to that around the pulp, and whether or not if you discard the pulp, does that then lessen the nutritional value of when you go through the juicing process at home?
I don't believe that it does, but I'm not 100% sure. I don't believe that it does.
Okay, great. And then Lori, my question to you is, have you found it difficult, any more difficult during this time of sort of quarantining and lockdown, and maybe restrictions in the ability to source healthy foods? Have you found it any more difficult now than before to maintain your diet?
Yes, I do actually. So I do the order pickup, and then so I'm not going in the grocery store. And I've noticed that a lot of the no salt added options aren't available for pickup. So they don't necessarily have everything on the grocery store available for pickup. So what we do is we sort of conglomerate this list, and then my husband goes in with gloves and a mask and runs in and get it and runs back out with his with his haul. But we try to limit the number of times we go to the grocery store and get as much as we possibly can for them to just load into the car. And then as far as just restaurants go, we do, I mean, I don't want people to think that we never eat at a restaurant or that you can't, because you can. You just have to be super, super careful and ask a whole lot of questions about how they prepare it. Does it come frozen? You just have to ask a lot of irritating, sometimes, questions. And then then going forward, at that restaurant. But It is harder now, I think, because even with restaurants, if you're ordering something for them to deliver to you, you have to be able to leave in the instructions, you know, no sauce, whatever it is that you're trying to leave off. So,
Yeah, typical. Yeah, but worth it. I mean, I think that's the message, right? It's still worth it, even if it's difficult. We've got a question from Lynette, and Lynette wants to know, what do you think about using stevia? So any of you who might be, you know, who might have used it or have been dissuaded from using it, would be great to get your thoughts on stevia.
Blank.
Blank. Lindsay.
I think it's considered to be a better option instead of something like Sweet and Low. It's definitely going to be a better option.
Mm-hmm.
But personally, if I ever was to add any types of sugar, I would go with the raw cane sugar. Again, it's going to be the purest form. I know that a lot of people use stevia. Mm-hmm. I personally haven't used it much, but again, it's a better option than using something like Sweet and Low.
Right. And when I use, I tend to use honey. I mean, it's just
honey is a good,
a natural option for stevia. Yeah. We've got another question here. This is a great question. What are some tips to not overeat while the COVID crisis is with us? In other words, when you're at home and you don't have ways to limit portion control, you know, sort of your portion size. Any good tips, Lindsay, for portion control?
Well, tracking is one. And I know it's a pain in the butt, but I think initially when we're getting started, we don't know what we're doing and we really can't see that. So tracking, maybe pre-planning some snacks, like things like fruits and vegetables, putting them in bags and there. So like if you're just bored and you need something to chomp on, whether you like carrots or cucumbers or raw peppers, whatever it is, like have some of those things, start replacing some of your snacks for like healthier choices, some nuts, some things like that, so that they're there and available and you're still getting this sensation maybe of eating. Or try just changing the habit. Maybe you get up and start moving. You do like a 2-minute little exercise routine. But tracking will help you to actually see how much you're really truly consuming. And that's the only way to kind of get an idea, engage it, get started. And then after you become more familiar with the foods that you're eating, you don't have to track forever. It's just a great way to kind of gain the knowledge so you can make better choices.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, all of us are having these challenges, and I find just not having it in my house at all. Right. I mean, that's like the first, right. That's like my first tip to myself. Okay, let's skip the Dorito aisle.
Yes.
You know, let's do something else. We've got a question from Karen about, can you say something about balancing potassium intake for those of us on drugs that may elevate potassium levels? Dr. Sheesh, maybe I can throw that to you.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very common problem with our heart patients with heart failure, because we often will use drugs that are that actually keep your potassium in. So that would be our aldosterone antagonists. And then we have other drugs like ACE inhibitors and ARBs that are blood pressure medicines that we use to prevent the heart from getting weaker. And they can raise your potassium as well as your kidney function. Mm-hmm. So I always say tomatoes, potatoes, and bananas are kind of the key items. So tomatoes, potatoes, and bananas. And usually when I start there, I think people say, whoa, I use a lot of ketchup. I eat a lot of tomatoes. You'll hear people start to say, I eat French fries, and things that you probably shouldn't. But obviously a lot of fruit. Orange juice is another big one. Lindsay, do you want to add some with that? Any more fruits? But we have to be very careful. If you're on a diuretic that we call a loop diuretic, such as Lasix or torsemide, those actually cause you to lose potassium. So you can kind of, I don't want to say cheat, but then it becomes one way of balancing it. So for those patients that really love the tomatoes, they can actually not take a potassium tablet, but instead actually take all their potassium through their diet. that can only be done actually when you're able to get labs frequently. I really do not recommend to experiment with that now. Why? Because actually the most serious thing that can ever happen is actually rhythm disturbances, and they occur when the potassium is actually either way too high or more likely when it's way too low. So you really don't want to be changing your practice at this moment unless you can monitor and know how to do it. So I do have some patients that actually never take a potassium tablet while on a medication that helps them lose potassium because they are perfect with their diet, and it works out best for them. But that's and then sometimes I'll tell them to actually, you know, take Lasix and take a banana daily, you know, while they take their water pill. And that is what I do. But I can tell you that those patients know that I check their blood the day after they stop taking the water pills and the supplement. So usually I do 3 days at a time. So I'm very careful, and then I repeat my blood work because it's a very serious consequence if you actually guess wrong. And you can never guess how much somebody is going to lose when they're on the water pills. Very patient dependent.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. This is sort of a fun thing that I discovered about bananas lately is that you can take bananas and break them into pieces and freeze them and put them in a blender. And I'm telling you, it's like ice cream. And I would never have believed it. There's nothing in it but bananas. And it's wonderful. So try it sometime, maybe after you can talk to your doctor. But
Great idea. Great idea.
Great.
Right. Now the questions are rolling in. I feel like this is, you know, you guys have really prompted some good discussion here. Question about fasting. Do you recommend fasting? I've heard it's a good option. Is this question?
I'm going to leave that to Lindsey because I would say for
Well, I think it really kind of, it can be a good option, but I would always say to consult with your physician first, especially if you're on any types of medication. Intermittent fasting is something that can be a benefit for some individuals, and it does work for a lot of people. However, if you are on any type of medication, definitely consult your physician before making any drastic changes. You always want to make sure to consult them. But it is definitely an option that does bring a lot of benefits. So it's worth that discussion.
Thanks. Let's move on because we've got 2 minutes left, but there are a couple of questions about salt substitutes. One about are salt substitutes with potassium chloride okay? And I want to lump this other one with it, which is it necessary to replace the iodine that you're not getting from salt if you reduce your salt intake? So I think that those are kind of somewhat, you know, in the same family. Dr. Sheesh, maybe?
I'll answer the first one. Those salt substitutes are very dangerous. They are potassium used as a substitute for salt. Potassium actually, when taken in large amounts, can rapidly kill. I mean, that is how people were, you know, how they had lethal injections in the past. Was through potassium.
So the answer is no. Do not.
The answer is no.
Substitute with a potassium base is not a good idea.
Not a good idea. I'm pretty, that's one way of making it very clear. It's not safe.
Yeah.
The other about, do you need a certain amount of iodine in your system? Lindsey, I'd ask you, I guess
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how that one either.
Okay. Well, we are right bang on 3 o'clock. I want to thank very much Lindsey Robertson, Lori Woods, and Eileen Hsich for your time today. Thank you to our participants for the great questions. I hope you all learned a little bit something new today to maintain a heart-healthy diet, and we look forward to seeing you next time. And also, thanks to our sponsors. And finally, if you want to watch this again or recommend it to your friends and family, it will be available at WomenHeart.org. Thanks, everyone.